When we talk about B2B marketing, we're going to be talking about B2B marketing from the perspective of who we are speaking to, and that, of course, is your target audience. So we spend a lot of time on that at the forefront. We're going to move a lot more quickly through some of the other areas, B2B marketing, when it is time for us to differentiate these two. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, where today we're going to be differentiating between B2B marketing and B2C marketing. Now, this is actually going to be a two-part series, so it's important that you check out today's episode as well as our episode that is next going to air, because we're going to run them back to back. And I wanted to cover this topic really critically because we have so many people that reach out when we start having those conversations about growing a law firm, and they ask the question, well, if I want to serve in an area outside of my chosen practice area, maybe I'm a business lawyer and I want to acquire a personal injury law firm, or maybe I'm a family lawyer and I want to move into the space of doing some business immigration. A lot of times the question is almost so insurmountable for really entrepreneurial lawyers because they haven't truly understood what distinguishes between marketing for B2B and marketing for B2C. So, I'm assuming that everybody knows when I say B2B versus B2C that I'm talking about business to business or business to consumer, right? Business to consumer we think of as selling to one person versus business to business, you're typically selling to a decision-making panel or group of people. And there are some very unique differences that will pop up in marketing in both of these areas that law firm owners have to understand. And you might think, I don't need to understand how to market to B2B because my law firm is only a B2C law firm. And there is some truth to that in the immediacy. But one of the things that we're always trying to help our population of people understand is not just how do we continue to stay relevant, vibrant, growing in our current market, but also how do we see opportunities to expand beyond our current reach? And business expansion is one very critical way, one very exciting way that law firm owners will expand their territories as well as be able to grow their law firms. So we're going to talk about it from the perspective of 9 different areas that are distinguishable between B2B marketing and B2C marketing. So let's dive in. All right. First up, we're going to talk about target audience. Okay. So if you're a B2C law firm, if you serve in the areas of family law or estate planning, real estate oftentimes, much more often than not, even though real estate can be a B2B entity if you're selling commercial real estate to a business. But if you are, generally speaking, selling where you're going to have one person, your target audience can vary. You can have a different type of avatar within the who we serve category. But generally speaking, as I said before, you're going to have either one or many as your audience. Now, in terms of your audience for B2B, you're typically going to be thinking about business owners. You're going to be thinking about executives, entrepreneurs, in-house counsel, right? That's a very common one. In fact, a lot of our business lawyers will only make pitches and only send out letters of engagement to in-house counsel at corporations. They're not actually dealing with the corporation. They're dealing with the legal side of the corporation, which will have one or perhaps a series of lawyers within a group. Now, why does this matter, right? How is this so critically important? Then you could have a business owner who happens to be getting divorced, or you could have an executive who happens to need a will. How does one take it from B2B to B2C? Well, the thing that's important to understand is really the ultimate way that you're going to structure your marketing messages when you are speaking to a decision maker on behalf of a business versus speaking to the business owner as the sole person, right? If I'm selling a service and I need one person to align with my message, hear what I have to say, have a sales conversation with me and make a decision, that's a very different process and involves different messaging than if I am speaking to a collective or a group of people, because then I need to speak to the interests and the wishes of the people who will make the decisions. But sometimes those people are not aligned, right? Sometimes you could have many people making a decision. For instance, your target audience, if it's in-house counsel, it could be that in-house counsel has to buy into you being the attorney that they're going to hire, but then they have to make a pitch to an actual board or a C-suite that has to ratify that, right? Now, one might say, if they've entrusted the decision of who to work with for outhouse counsel, I should say, when I say outhouse counsel, that kind of demeans you. I don't want to limit you quite to that. But there's in-house counsel, and then there's adjunct counsel, right? If you have counsel that is not in-house counsel, and in-house counsel is hiring outside counsel, one of the things that will come up is that in-house counsel is really the decision maker, right? So you're selling yourself one lawyer to another lawyer. But there are times where there are considerations by the C-suite that in-house counsel may be able to speak to, but he or she is not necessarily making the decision. It's still going to be made by the board. And you have to understand how you're going to differentiate your message and where your channels are going to be. We're going to talk about marketing channels in a moment, but where your channels are going to be when you are trying to reach that audience of many versus that audience of one in a B2C situation. Now, as I said before, B2C is typically one individual. Sometimes you can have a family, or you can have a couple making a decision, right? You could be selling shares in the cannabis industry, and perhaps you're getting representation around the regulatory aspects of the purchasing of those shares or selling of those shares. So you might, in that instance, need to speak to the husband and wife who are accredited investors. Or perhaps you are structuring a real estate deal. So the buyer and seller are each a couple. So a husband and wife are selling their home to another husband and wife. So you need both of the two people in that union to make a decision. But ultimately, you're still creating, generally speaking, a unified message to one individual. And here, the individual, the couple, functions as a unit, right? So you don't have to have a message for the husband that is completely dissimilar than the message to the wife. You might want to tailor it when you're speaking to a particular human, right? Because everything is based on what the human values. And so you might ultimately speak to a human that values something more than another. But you're not going to grossly differentiate what you have to say based on the individuals that you're selling to when you're selling in the B2C context, right? So the other thing that, and we're spending a lot of time, by the way, on the target audience, because this is one of those things that is critical and runs through all of the other aspects of marketing. So when we talk about B2B marketing, we're going to be talking about B2B marketing from the perspective of who we are speaking to. And that, of course, is your target audience. So we spend a lot of time on that at the forefront. We're going to move a lot more quickly through some of the other areas of B2B marketing when it is time for us to differentiate these two, okay? So the next area that I want to talk about is the buyer journey. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the buyer journey, I want you to think about it when we talk about marketing. Generally, we talk about a funnel, and we talk about leads coming into a funnel and ultimately resulting in a paying customer at the bottom of your funnel, okay? So if you just conceptualize it that way, the journey would be from top of funnel to bottom of funnel, okay? What is going to happen from the time someone becomes aware of your service all the way until they make a buying decision? Now, with B2C marketing, typically it is a shorter process, and oftentimes it is more emotionally charged, right? You are trying to get someone out of jail, right? They're in jail right now. They need to get out right now. They need to talk to a lawyer right now. They need to make a buying decision right now. Versus in B2B marketing, you typically will have a longer buy cycle, and it will be a relationship-based, relationship-driven buy cycle with multiple decision makers. So it could be that you're going to have the same general idea, right? Top of funnel to bottom of funnel, but that top of funnel is probably going to go down to maybe the first third or maybe the middle of the funnel. And then it could go back up and down throughout your funnel until you get all the way to the end. So that could mean making multiple pitches. That could mean having several conversations. And it could be that when you're having a conversation with a decision maker, the decision maker changes, right? You could be outside counsel for a business where you are making the same pitch every year to renew your service. Maybe you have an annual subscription, and they make a decision when it's time to review the budget as to whether or not they're going to hire you, and if so, for what scope of work. And that conversation might start in July and not be finalized until December to start up with a new contract in January. Well, let's say in July, you start the conversation with one person, then their team grows, and so they loop in another person who comes into your next conversation, and that person has different questions, different concerns, and you have to now get that person on board. And then let's say the first person leaves the company, right? And maybe the first person was your raving fan and the second person doesn't know you yet and wants to seek other options or seek competitive bids, right? So you can have any number of complexities that are involved in the B2B marketing buyer journey, because the journey, again, touches different people and oftentimes involves a longer relationship-based experience, right? It is not simply, I need something, I'm hiring someone now. It is oftentimes, I need something for a duration, and whether with you or how with you is going to impact my global budget, is going to impact different divisions, it's going to impact bigger decisions that we have to make in the company. It's a more complex transaction. All right. Third area that is distinguishable between B2B and B2C is the sales cycle. Now, when we say the sales cycle, that's a little bit different than the buyer journey, okay? The sales cycle talks about the time period from when we start the conversation until we get to close, okay? The buyer journey is what pieces of information have to touch throughout the buyer's marketing and sales experience from when they are going to become aware of you to when they're ultimately going to become a client. And you might be cultivating a relationship, that relationship-driven connection that happens in the B2B world. You might be cultivating that over months or years, right? Versus a sales cycle, you don't typically want to take years to make a sale, right? So once you are in relationship with whomever it is that is a decision maker in a B2B experience, you then want to have some period of time that is reasonably predictable, the same way that you want in a B2C arrangement, where you are taking the person from initiation of the sales conversation to close, okay? That can take weeks, that can take months, but it oftentimes will involve proposals, requests for proposals, RFPs. It could involve multiple consultations. There could be a period of time of negotiation. Could go to budget review, right? Versus B2C. Now, B2C, the sales cycle can also be an extended sales cycle, right? It doesn't become an automatic sale simply because it's a B2C arrangement. However, it oftentimes will be shorter overall, just like the buyer journey will be shorter overall. So it could be days, it could be a day, right? It could be a same day sale, but it also is going to be driven by urgency, just like the buyer journey, right? So the messages that you're going to put into the various different channels where people will consume your marketing message when you are selling B2C are going to be about acting now, relieving pressure, taking away pain, right? Versus when you are in the B2B world, you're going to have some of those messages, but they're going to be more lightly coded, and they're going to be much more driven toward creating a strong relationship, savings overall, an enduring culture or an enduring value system, or the continuity of care that you're going to provide, right? Whatever it is that you're selling in the B2B context, you want that to be something that is trickled into every touch point over your buyer journey, but your sales cycle is going to reflect that, right? Because again, the absence of urgency is typically going to mean that you're going to be selling larger contracts, but over a longer period of time. All right, next up, the next differentiator of B2B versus B2C marketing is our key marketing goal, right? When we are selling B2C, we want to capture attention with our marketing, right? We want to grab eyes and ears. We want to establish trust. We want to be the authority, right? That's the reason why there's a big boom in video. Video has become one of the necessary mechanisms of marketing. And we've talked a lot about video marketing on this podcast. We'll continue to talk about it because it is definitely one of those strategies that we recommend that every business owner be involved with. But those marketing videos that are the FAQs, the shorter 30-second to 3-minute type videos that are educational, that show you as the authority, as the leader in a space, as a speaker on a topic, right? Those videos capture attention. They get people to believe in you to increase that know, like, and trust factor. In the B2B world, you need some of that. However, you're thinking much more about developing expertise, building authority, and you really want to think about long-term relationships, right? So the messaging that you put out in your form of video would be designed around the idea of talking about the connection that you're going to make as the lawyer with the company or the series of decision makers, whomever's involved, right? The C-suite, the executive board, etc. But you want to create the messaging around the relationship, because these relationships are typically not one and done, right? You're not usually selling a one-off contract or a one-off, creation of a document. It could be, right? It could be, hey, I'm selling the incorporation of an LLC. But that's a lower end service and it's a one and done. More often when we talk about B2B marketing, we're talking about securing contracts for extended services over some length of time, premised upon you being the attorney of choice for a business or an entity, association, etc. All right. Now let's shift and talk a little bit about marketing tone. Okay, this is your message. Now, marketing messages are a dime a dozen, right? Everybody's got one. And I'm sure we all can think about those critical pain points, right? We've talked about the pain point exercise before. We're going to do another episode on that really soon. But the idea is you need to know why your people hire a lawyer that provides your service, okay? If you just ask yourself that question, why do my people hire a lawyer to provide the service that I provide? Okay, now this is not specific to you. This is just in general. What is the pain that they want alleviated by virtue of hiring me? Is it the saving time that they don't have to do a lot of this activity themselves? Is it the knowledge and expertise that I bring that they don't have to research it themselves? Is it mitigating risk by virtue of having me on board? They're able to avoid regulatory problems, compliance with the law, because I will make sure that they are doing all of that as a part of their system. Is it risk mitigation simply by virtue of saying you have a lawyer on staff, right? Or on tap? Could be to stave off any exposure or risks with sexual harassment lawsuits. You have a lawyer that comes in and does an anti-harassment training at the beginning of every year that everyone has to attend and everyone has to sign off on, right? That could be a part of an annualized contract of service that an employment attorney provides you, right? That type of ongoing relationship, again, is something that you want to speak to in your messaging. But the tone of what you typically are going to see in B2B marketing is a little bit different than what you're going to see in B2C marketing, okay? So let's kind of cover the basics. Usually with B2C, you're talking about high empathy. You're talking about accessible. You want to be a person that is approachable by the people. You want to have a benefit focus. We fight for you. We do the work. We relieve the pressure. We take this off your shoulders. Whatever it is that is your value proposition, you want your messaging to be inundated with that, right? Anytime someone encounters you, you want them to be hearing over and over and over again how much you care for your clients, how much you achieve for them, and how you achieve it for them. Like you achieve a semblance of balance. You fight for them. You achieve their ultimate objective. Because ultimately, for most people that are consuming legal services, they want to win, right? And winning doesn't have to necessarily mean a battle of winner versus loser in court, but it does embody the idea of winning whatever it is that the person is seeking by virtue of the representation. On the other hand, when you are speaking in a B2B context, right? Again, all people want to win. People want to get their needs met. But much more often in a B2B context, you're talking about industry-specific ROI and risk-driven analysis, right? You are helping a person to mitigate the risk of not hiring you. You are helping a person to gain a return on their investment of hiring you. right? So a lot of times it's very much that you will be speaking to the fact that by virtue of hiring you, a company was able to save 3 times your fee in payouts that they would have made to the state in, nuisance noncompliance that gets caught every year, right? Or it could be that by virtue of working with you, the company has been able to successfully mitigate every discrimination claim that has been raised over the past 20 years, right? Fraudulent, frivolous, or not, claims get raised. And when claims are made, by virtue of you being there, you are reducing the risk that someone will have a big payout, right? So what they pay to you offsets by a multitude variable what they ultimately would have either had to pay or had to pay to defend in legal fees in order to address it, right? So you're really talking about being the professional. You're talking about, by virtue of your industry, by virtue of your legal expertise, you are saving a company and or you are gaining them some type of market share. You are helping them with some type of economic reward. Now, you can have risk mitigation in B2C and you can have empathy in B2B. So these are not mutually exclusive. I don't want to suggest to you that you don't want to suggest that you care about your B2B clients and that you don't want to suggest that you gain a return on investment for your B2C clients. You do, but the languaging, the tone, the messaging, the approach to how we communicate varies quite substantially from B2B and B2C. All right. This has been the first part of our series on B2C versus B2B marketing. On our next episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, we're going to dive into further ways that we will differentiate these two so that you can understand them and make use of these marketing strategies in your law firm. I'm Allison Williams, your Law Firm Mentor, and I will see you on our next episode.